And I would like to introduce Pedro Encarnacao from BIOMIN, Director of Business Development in BIOMIN, and Pedro will give an overview on the NutriEconomics concept of BIOMIN integrating nutrition, environment, and economics. Pedro.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here. I see it's going to be a big challenge for me to give the last presentation after all the outstanding presentations in this session. But I'll try to do my best. I'll be talking about NutriEconomics in aquaculture. Oops, okay. So when we look at the aquaculture industry, we see that we have several different scientific fields that can be involved in the aquaculture industries. These ones being nutrition, biotechnology, environmental issues in terms of environmental impacts, but also economics and efficiency parameters. So what is NutriEconomics? NutriEconomics is a concept that was developed by BIOMIN to create the awareness in terms of improving efficiencies in terms of nutrition, economics or profitability, and environmental. And the nutrition, economic, and the environment are the three pillars of the concept of NutriEconomics. Looking at nutrition and nutritional science, we have to understand that in terms of nutrition, we are trying through feed to create biomass gain. And growth performance and biomass gain depends firstly on the composition of feed. The feed must contain all the required nutrients in a balanced way to maximize biomass gain. We've been talking about what is feed. Feed are composed by ingredients, but depending on the ingredients that you have in your feed, we are going to have a different response. Initially, you have to make use of ingredients that are palatable for the animals so that they can maximize the intake. Then, depending on the ingredients that you have, and you have different digestibility. So the amount of digestible nutrients that the animal can take is important in terms of retention, but also plays an important matter in terms of what is the waste that is created. Finally, in terms of the digestion nutrients that are available to the animal, bioavailability and the amount of ingredients that can be retained and transformed into biomass gain is also an important matter. So nutritional science look at establishing requirements. We establish requirements for different nutrients, normally with dose response trials where we can establish what are the requirements for different nutrients. But sometimes this is a challenging task. Here is a good example where you see that several studies to establish the lysine requirement for trout, and some of them, they come out with different results. This because there is interaction between different nutrients. So it is important to understand that by having different types of feed or different stages of the animal, you are going to get different results. Also, we have some nutrients that beyond the requirement, when you apply at a level beyond requirement, you can have some additional effects. Also, some other nutrients like it was, or some components that was mentioned before, like functional feed or functional substances that can improve the disease resistance or the livability of the animal. So ultimately, the goal in terms of nutritional sciences is to develop these factorial models where you can integrate the interactions between different nutrients and different compounds so that you can predict and maximize the biomass gain. Dominic is one of the leaders in the application of factorial models in nutrition. And this is the ultimate goal, I would say, the ultimate goal in terms of the nutritional science. And here, then you can look, by having these models, you can modulate your feeds to see how we can increase daily weight gain so that you have an increase in final weight gain, improved FCR, improved digestibility to have lower feed costs, increase vitality of the animal, so you reduce the mortality. So this would be the ultimate goal in terms of using these models. Then you have the economics. In economics, the parameters change. You have your feeding to increase the performance, but the ultimate goal is profit. Here, so as I mentioned, the parameters are totally different. Here, what is king is without cutting cost and add margin. Add margin is actually the most important parameter in terms of when you're looking at economic perspective. So again, our analysis in terms of the diet composition is more not in the nutrient level, but looking at the feed cost compared to performance and revenue. So here we are connected to what is the price of the end product in the market, what are the costs of our ingredients, and how can we maximize the margin zone? How can we maximize our profit? It's not about how can we maximize the growth of the animal or how can we reduce the feed cost. It's how can we maximize profit. And here is a good example. This is from the poultry industry. And here you can see that, for example, you have your nutritional recommendations. But in terms of maximizing your profit, this is achieved not at the recommended level, but at 12% additional input in terms of protein level, so that you can maximize because depending on the price of, in this case, was breast meat. If you see, this is 2006 prices, but in 2007, there was different prices in the market. And here, the maximum recommendation to obtain maximum profit is change, is no longer 12% additional input in nutrients, or in this case protein, but only 4%. So when you look at, for example, this is the fluctuation of salmon prices, and you can see that this is in 3 years, and even in the same year, you have a different fluctuation on the prices. If you want to maximize your profitability, you probably will have also to adjust the nutrition of your feed, so to maximize the growth and maximize profit. We always look at, in terms of economic impact in the aquaculture, is always to look at reducing cost. That is one of the targets. However, there are many strategies to reduce costs. Are we talking about reducing costs of feed by looking at the cost of a kilogram of feed, or should we look at feeding costs, meaning looking at reducing the cost of producing 1 kilo of fish? Again, this is an example from the University of Guelph, where they clearly show that you have a regular feed, you have a high nutrient dense diet that is more expensive. It has more nutrients, but is more expensive. At the end of a feeding trial, the fish achieve the same growth. So you are achieving the same growth, but one diet is more expensive than the other. What is important is to see that the FCR was highly improved or was reduced with a high nutrient dense diet, meaning that when you look at the feeding cost, or meaning how much, what was the cost to produce 1 metric ton of fish, you can see that actually the more expensive diet was actually the more efficient. So it is very important to look at efficiency. This does not mean that all the time that you have a better diet, you are going, or a more costly diet, you are going to have better revenues. In some situations, you can actually also reduce the cost of your feed by, or reduce the efficiency by reducing the cost of the feed. This is normally seen in species that are a lower value species, and in systems like pond systems where additional nutrition can be achieved also from the pond. Here, we can see that by reducing the amount of digestible protein in the diet, you see an increase in the FCR, but in terms of revenue, you can still get higher profit with a cheaper feed. Important aspects is to take into account is how long does it take to achieve the same size of fish. So here we can see that you can attain the same growth, but takes longer. Also, we have to look at the production of, or the impact in terms of waste. And as you can see here, you see a bigger impact in terms of the waste. And this brings me to the third pillar, which is the environment. We now see that environmental responsibility, it's becoming more and more required by the consumer. The consumers now want to know what is the carbon footprint, what is the environmental impact of our product. Luckily, aquaculture in terms of carbon footprint, and we are more as a carbon net user than a carbon net producer. And this is because many times when you are you have input of nutrient into the pond, this is going to grow algae. The algae are net consumers of CO2 and producers of oxygen. So when you look at the carbon footprint in terms of aquaculture operation is much, much lower compared to animal or livestock. Major impact is in water eutrophication and the damage of the ecosystems, is when you destroy mangrove areas to establish shrimp ponds or fish ponds. Also another issue is the fish in and fish out, where you must have, or how much kilograms of wild fish you are using into producing 1 kilo of farmed salmon. What is important to understand is aquaculture production system, they affect, but they are also in turn affected by the ecological environment these operate. Feed is the ultimate source of waste. It's by the input of feed that you are increasing the nutrient in the ponds, and by degradation of nitrogen compounds, by creation of ammonia, nitrates, hydrogen sulfide, the accumulation of these toxic compounds in the environment can negatively affect the environment. So it is important to control the impact of in the environment by removing or by reducing the waste discharges. And this is the responsibility of the industry. Of course, that this comes at an economic cost. We have to be more efficient. So in terms of strategies, like I said, there are many ways to produce 1 kilo of fish. You can use a regular feed. You are going to reach a 1 kilo of fish that is going to have a price in the market. You can achieve the same kilogram of fish by using a cheaper feed with lower nutrient density. Probably you will have to need to use a bigger quantity of this feed. Probably can even be more expensive in terms of feeding costs. You are going to produce more waste, and this can have an impact in the environment. Also, you can have special feeds that include special ingredients that can make the fish grow faster or can make a better quality product in terms of meat quality, and this can give you a higher price. But you are going to spend more for these feeds. So in terms of the NutriEconomic strategies, these are strategies that in terms of nutritional science focus on innovative feed strategies like ingredients, feed additives to improve nutritional performance, looking at improved profit margins, reduced cost per kilograms of fish produced, and of course, reduced environmental impact and reduced waste discharges. It's already late in the day. So, BIOMIN, we use this NutriEconomic concept to evaluate all the products that we develop. So in this case, whenever we are looking at the performance of a certain feed additive, we integrate these three pillars. We look at animal performance, like daily growth coefficient, FCR, production, but also we look at revenues, ROI, and environmental impact. I'll give you a more specific example. On this trial, this was a trial done in Pangasius production in Vietnam, where we followed the production during the whole cycle. So we achieved production of about 350 tons of fish per hectare. We see here an improvement. So this was by using a phytogenic feed additive. So this is based on essential oils. We see here that we could reduce the FCR of the fish, of the feed. This because essential oils can have an improvement in feed efficiency by stimulating endogenous enzyme production, by modulating gut gut microbiota, and also to reduce pathogenic challenges. So also, we see an improvement in specific growth rate, and here we also looked at the fillet quality. So we were able to get fish that were high percentage of white fillet, which is normally the best product in terms of export. So that was in terms of performance, but then also we looked at the economic evaluation. So here we see what was the feed cost, what was the cost of the product, so total cost, we're looking at the feeding cost. And here we can see that in terms of feeding cost, we could reduce the feeding cost, so meaning how much would cost to produce 1 kilo of fish. Also, the farmer got a higher price for his fish because it was more white fillet, so we could get a higher price for it. So in total, we could see what was the total income of the different, the control and the pond where the product was used, and we look at the ROI of 1 to 5, or 1 to 5.8. So this means that with the application of the product, not only you see improvement in the performance of the animal, but what is important for the economic evaluation is that you also improve the profitability of the farmer. Finally, we looked at the environmental impact. So we can see here that by increasing the efficiency, the feed efficiency, we were able to reduce the solid and the dissolved waste. We were able to reduce the discharge of phosphorus and nitrogen into the pond. So that's why when we do our NutriEconomic evaluation into a feed additive, we have it under the 3 pillars, and we can say that by the application of this product in the feed, we could reduce 7% in FCR. We could, in terms of economics, we could give an additional gain of $30 per ton of fish produced, and a reduction of about 57 tons of total waste into 1 hectare pond. But BIOMIN has moved beyond this, and one thing that we are very proud of is our achievement of a life cycle assessment and get the ISO 14040 certification, where we were able to see the carbon footprint of all of our products. With this information, we then can also see what is the impact in terms of carbon footprints of our products in terms of environment impact. So again, going to this trial, we can see that by using our product, there was a reduction of 82 grams of carbon dioxide produced by each kilogram of fish produced. And as you can see here, a significant reduction or a reduction in terms of carbon footprint. And we can see that this is mainly related by the reduction of the feed quantity used. So improving the feed efficiency reduces the amount of feed that is used, and in this case, feed is the biggest contributor for the carbon emissions, for the carbon footprint of the Pangasius production. So, as a conclusion, I would say that NutriEconomics is a concept to optimize production resources, optimizing profitability while maximizing performance, and achieve the end goals of sustainable and ecological fish farming. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pedro. We now have time for one question for Pedro on his interesting presentation on the NutriEconomics. Pedro, I would challenge you on your statement that aquaculture can be more of a CO2 net consumer than producer. I mean, we talked today about the different systems, and certainly this is not applicable to all of them.
Correct.
So how would you see also the industry communicating this in a better way? Do we need to start talking less about aquaculture and more about the specific species that are produced in the inside, or
I
to
think
better
that
communicate these messages?
I think that even if you look at, if you compare aquaculture to other animal production systems, aquaculture is still going to have a lower carbon footprint compared to the other
Yeah, we saw
species.
that.
Of course, that then when you look at aquaculture in itself, you'll have production systems that are going to be more carbon friendly than others. So extensive system or pond system where you have growth of microalgae are going to be much more carbon footprint neutral when you compare to systems that are produced in cages in open waters. There you will not have the impact of algae on sequestering carbon dioxide.
Thank you.